Isn't it strange how the universe works? You think you've been waiting, planning, guarding your heart, believing that connection will arrive when it's convenient. But life doesn't follow your schedule. It doesn't knock politely or ask for permission. Sometimes the person who's meant to reach you will appear out of nowhere, catching you off guard, testing if you're paying attention, if you're ready to notice, if you can handle the chaos of someone who changes everything. Stepping into your world without warning. Timing never asks for permission. It doesn't pause for your plans, your routines, or the little schedules you like to tell yourself control the world. You think you're ready, that you've set everything in order, that when the moment comes, you'll be waiting in exactly the right way. That's the illusion. Timing doesn't care about illusion. It moves when it moves. And it's always earlier or later than you expected. You notice it in small ways at first. The way mornings feel longer, afternoons heavier. The way decisions you thought you had time for suddenly compress into urgency. You ignore it at first because the patterns are subtle. You've been trained to respond to noise, to dramatic signals, to events that demand attention. Timing doesn't shout. It whispers, nudges, tilts reality slightly so that if you're paying attention, you see it. If you're not, you stumble right past, thinking everything is still the same, thinking you've got control. You never do. Not really. The clock ticks, whether you're aware of it or not. Hours fold into each other. Days slip through your fingers. And the moments that matter arrive quietly, with no fanfare, when you are distracted, looking the other way, or busy convincing yourself that nothing important could possibly be happening right now. That's why timing is the cruelest teacher. It doesn't punish you immediately. It lets you linger in comfort. Let you convince yourself you're safe, that you can delay, that you can wait until you feel prepared. But preparation is a mirage. You're never ready for the way life lands, for the way connection appears without warning, for the way someone who matters might step into your world while you're still adjusting to everything else. You felt hints before, subtle signals that something is shifting, that the rhythm of your life isn't quite what it seems. Maybe it's a sudden awareness in your chest, a thought you can't shake, a feeling that someone is closer than you think. You dismiss it. You always do. The world trains you to dismiss uncertainty, to label intuition as coincidence, to reduce chaos into patterns you understand. Timing doesn't play by those rules. It comes anyway. It bends reality just enough so that when the moment arrives, you can't ignore it even if you wanted to. You start noticing the small signs, messages that feel meaningful, coincidences that cut too close to be random, thoughts of someone that appear uninvited but insistently. You rationalize them. You tell yourself you've imagined it, that it's nothing, that it's just another day repeating itself. But the clock is moving, and the universe is arranging itself quietly around moments you won't anticipate until they land. There's a peculiar tension in those moments, a stillness that precedes action, a suspense that feels heavier than the reality itself. You feel it as a pull, a subtle alignment of circumstances that you can't control. You want to be ready, to prepare, to anticipate, but readiness is irrelevant. Timing doesn't wait. It doesn't care about plans or comfort zones. You start replaying scenarios in your head, imagining how you might respond, how you might notice, how you might recognize the significance before it disappears again. But the truth is, those rehearsals don't matter. What matters is presence, the ability to see what is right in front of you, the willingness to acknowledge that something is arriving whether you're prepared or not. Timing doesn't knock. It slides into your awareness when the environment, the people, and the circumstance all align perfectly and quietly in a way that can't be ignored. And you realize, if you miss it, it won't wait. Opportunities don't linger. Moments of true connection don't hesitate. They arrive unannounced, testing your attention, testing your ability to notice, testing whether you've been paying enough attention to the small, subtle patterns of life that whisper truths you've been avoiding. Timing is the invisible hand that moves everything forward, and just because you can't see it, just because it doesn't bend to your schedule, doesn't mean it isn't there, preparing, nudging, aligning, until the moment comes when it will no longer whisper, and you either recognize it or you let it pass, forever altering the path you thought you were walking, forever reminding you that the world has its own plans, its own rhythm, its own way of delivering what matters, when it matters, whether you like it or not. Unexpected arrivals don't come with warning signs. They don't text in advance, leave footprints, or give hints that fit neatly into your calendar. They show up while you're busy living life, the way you've always lived it, confident that everything is predictable, comfortable, and under control. You think you know how people enter your world, how connections happen, how relationships unfold. You're wrong. They arrive suddenly, unpredictably, shaking the foundation you've built and testing whether you're paying attention. That unpredictability makes them terrifying, exhilarating, and completely unavoidable. You notice the shift first in small ways. A thought that won't leave your mind, a memory that surfaces at the wrong time, a message that seems ordinary until it isn't. You dismiss it, rationalize it, continue on your routine. That's exactly what makes it effective. Life doesn't break through with alarms. It slips in quietly, unannounced, when your attention is elsewhere. And by the time you realize it, it's already changed everything. You feel it as tension before recognition. Your instincts prick in ways you've learned to ignore, but this time, ignoring them has consequences. You want to maintain normalcy, but normalcy is gone. You try to recreate the comfort you had, the illusion that things are under control, but it doesn't work. Nothing prepares you for the subtle, unrelenting pressure of someone entering your life in the way they were always meant to, testing boundaries, breaking patterns, rewriting routines. You start to notice details you never paid attention to before, the way words land, the timing of messages, the coincidences that feel too pointed to be random. You tell yourself it's coincidence, that you're reading too much into it, that life is just moving as it always does. But you're wrong. This is arrival, real, deliberate, undeniable, and it doesn't wait for your approval. You want signs. They're there, layered in everyday moments, a glance you catch out of the corner of your eye, a laugh that resonates differently, a feeling that tightens your chest without explanation. You suppress it because you've been trained to suppress the unfamiliar, the uncomfortable. But this discomfort is life tapping you on the shoulder, asking whether you're awake enough to notice what matters when it matters. You begin replaying interactions in your head, scrutinizing words, gestures, timing everything. You ask yourself whether it was always there or if you imagined it. That's the trap. You'll never be certain until you accept the moment as it is. Preparation seems impossible because it requires surrender. You can't prepare for what arrives without warning. You can only respond. And responding requires shedding control, letting go of schedules, dismissing plans, abandoning the illusion that you dictate the rules. You feel a pull, a tension, a magnetic force drawing attention to someone who wasn't on your radar, someone who rearranges priority without asking. Your rational mind wants explanations, sequences, steps. It wants predictability. But arrival doesn't negotiate with reason. It operates outside the boundaries you've constructed. You feel your heartbeat in moments where it should be steady, your focus sharpened in the mundane, your thoughts looping back to subtle signals you previously ignored. It's uncomfortable because you're aware of the stakes, aware that you can't rewind time, aware that ignoring it would mean losing something that might not come again. You start questioning your readiness, your openness, your capacity to recognize what matters without tainting it with fear or doubt. Timing doesn't care. The person arrives when the universe deems the alignment perfect, not when your calendar is empty, not when your heart is primed, not when your mind feels prepared. It arrives, testing your attention, your awareness, your ability to notice and respond. Everything you've relied on, habits, routines, predictability, crumbles quietly. Nothing about this arrival is convenient. Nothing about it fits neatly into your plans. That's the point. You realize that life doesn't respect schedules. It doesn't wait for certainty, permission, or readiness. And the longer you hesitate, the more fleeting the chance becomes, because unexpected arrivals are fleeting by nature. They aren't delayed. They aren't repeatable. They appear, and they change everything in ways that are subtle at first, undeniable soon after, and irreversible forever. If ignored, recognizing true connection isn't easy. It doesn't come with signs you can read in a book or formulas you can memorize. It doesn't arrive at the perfect time or in the perfect place. It sneaks in, dressed as coincidence, conversation, or distraction, and it tests whether you're awake enough to notice it. You think you'll recognize it because it will hit you like a thunderclap, but real connection doesn't scream. It whispers. It lingers in the pauses, the glances, the silences, the moments you almost overlook. You walk past it every day, distracted by routines, obligations, doubts, and excuses, convinced that anything that matters will announce itself with clarity. That's the trap. Life isn't that polite. Life doesn't wait for certainty. Life doesn't care whether your attention is perfectly aligned with your expectations. Connection comes when it comes, and it doesn't negotiate. You feel it first in subtle ways. A thought you can't shake. A name that surfaces without reason. A memory of a laugh that felt familiar in a way that unsettles you. You try to rationalize it. You tell yourself it's coincidence, that you're overthinking, that you're projecting meaning onto randomness. But randomness rarely feels this persistent, this pointed, this alive. You can't ignore it forever. It sits quietly at the edge of your awareness, testing your willingness to notice, testing your ability to see what matters before it passes through. Recognizing connection requires patience, but not the kind that waits idly, the kind that observes, that watches, that listens even when distraction beckons. Most people aren't ready for it because they are busy seeking drama, clarity, certainty, proof. Real connection doesn't arrive with guarantees. It arrives with ambiguity, with questions, with discomfort. And that discomfort is a test. Can you sit with it? Can you allow it to exist without needing to define it immediately? Can you tolerate uncertainty long enough to let it reveal itself fully? You replay interactions in your head, analyzing words, timing, gestures. You ask yourself if you missed something or misread a signal. You convince yourself you're imagining it because imagining it feels safer than confronting the possibility that something real is here, waiting for you to acknowledge it. Recognizing connection requires honesty with yourself. You can't lie to your instincts. They notice the small things, the lingering look, the tone that softens, the moments when your chest tightens without explanation. They signal before your mind can rationalize, before your habits intervene. You might feel fear, even when nothing is overtly threatening. Fear is the body noticing stakes it hasn't fully quantified. Connection is dangerous because it demands vulnerability, presence, attention, and choice. Recognizing it means you have to let go of control, step out of comfort, and allow life to operate on its own timeline. You can't force it. You can't manipulate it. You can only pay attention, acknowledge the moments, and respond when they appear. You start to notice the patterns, the coincidences that feel deliberate, the repeated thoughts, the pull that grows stronger each day. You can't escape it. The more you resist, the louder it becomes in your awareness until you have no choice but to confront it. You realize that recognition doesn't happen in a single moment. It's a series of small awakenings, subtle realizations, repeated signals that build into awareness. And awareness requires courage. Courage to admit that something matters, that someone matters, that you've been blind to it. Because attention is hard to sustain, focus is difficult, and life keeps distracting you. You see it not in grand gestures, but in nuance, in timing, in alignment, in resonance that refuses to be ignored. And the longer you delay acknowledgement, the more fleeting it becomes. Because connection once missed rarely returns in the same form. It shifts, evolves, disappears. Recognizing true connection is about noticing the quiet signals, understanding their significance, trusting instincts that have been honed by patterns you've learned to ignore, and acting with presence when the moment demands it. It's about seeing what matters before it slips away, before life moves on, before chance passes and leaves you staring at absence, wondering how you missed the person who was always meant to intersect your path, the signals that were always there, subtle, persistent, waiting for you to finally notice and respond with awareness and honesty. Letting go of control is terrifying because you think the world belongs in your hands. You plan, you arrange, you predict outcomes, and you convince yourself that if everything follows the path you've drawn. You'll be safe, successful, untouchable. But life doesn't ask for permission. Life doesn't need your consent. It arrives anyway, in ways you can't anticipate, with timing that disregards calendars, with people who move independently of your expectations, with consequences that laugh quietly at your sense of order. You notice it first in small disruptions, the tiny shifts that feel inconvenient but familiar, a conversation that doesn't go the way you expected, a message you didn't anticipate, a feeling in your chest that something isn't aligned. You dismiss it because control is comforting. Comfort is familiar. Familiar feels safe. And you've been trained to cling to the illusion of safety. But the illusion is exactly what makes it dangerous. When you let go, even slightly, even for a moment, you confront the chaos you've been managing in neat, quiet compartments. You realize that control was never real. It was a story you told yourself to justify your routines, your delays, your hesitation. Letting go means acknowledging that story isn't truth. Letting go means surrendering to timing, to circumstance, to forces beyond your grasp. And surrender is uncomfortable because it requires honesty. Honest acknowledgement that you've been managing life, not living it. That your confidence has been based on familiarity, not mastery. You've built systems, habits, routines that make it feel like you can handle everything. But the systems only work when nothing unexpected happens. Control is a lie that thrives on predictability. It crumbles quietly when confronted with unpredictability. And unpredictability is the only constant. You convince yourself you're prepared. You rehearse scenarios. You make contingency plans. But contingency plans don't prepare you for reality. They prepare you for your imagination of reality. When life deviates from your imagination, control evaporates, leaving only decision, only action, only awareness. You notice how fragile it all was in retrospect, how much effort you spent maintaining the illusion while ignoring signals that things were shifting outside of your perception. Timing doesn't wait. People don't wait. Life doesn't wait. And letting go of control is the only way to align with it. You feel tension in the release, a pull between fear and curiosity, between resistance and acceptance. The fear is loud. It tells you to cling, to tighten, to manage. Curiosity whispers, nudges, tempts you to observe, to experience, to respond instead of react. But responding requires presence. Presence requires attention. And attention requires relinquishing the belief that you've been steering. The cracks appear gradually, not all at once. A misaligned expectation here, disruption there, small things that make you feel slightly off balance. You rationalize them. You adjust. You compensate. You think you've restored order. But order was never yours to restore. The discomfort grows. You feel it in your chest, in your thoughts, in your inability to predict what comes next. That's when you begin to notice the patterns, the subtle signals that control was never control, that it was structure imposed on chaos, not harmony with it. Letting go is not about giving up. It's about acknowledging limits. It's about seeing the world as it is, not as you hope it to be. It's about trusting timing, trusting circumstance, trusting yourself to respond when necessary instead of pretending you've orchestrated everything. You feel exposed when you release the reins, vulnerable, raw, but you also feel alive in ways that careful management never allowed. Life moves faster than your plans. People change unpredictably and consequences arise without warning. Control was never protection, it was avoidance. And you see that clearly when you stop resisting, when you allow uncertainty to be present, when you respond with honesty instead of structure. You notice signals you've been ignoring, opportunities you've overlooked, people who matter appearing when you weren't expecting. Letting go sharpens awareness. It heightens sensitivity. It requires courage because you realize that every attempt to hold everything in place was costing you. The moments that actually matter, the connections you didn't see, the shifts you could have acted on. And as you release, even partially, even imperfectly, you begin to understand that control was never yours to wield. That timing, connection, life itself moves independently. And the only way to align with it is to surrender to its rhythm, to observe, to notice, to respond, to participate without the illusion of absolute authority, and to feel fully the chaos an order that exists simultaneously, all around you, all at once, waiting for recognition and action without asking for. Permission signs you've been missing are the cruelest trick of life. They're quiet, subtle, almost invisible if you're not paying attention. You think you've been careful, observant, aware, but awareness is a skill most people stop practicing the moment routine feels safe. You walk through days thinking you notice everything, but the signals that matter hide in the pauses, in the silences, in the moments you don't consider worth examining. You dismiss coincidences as chance, coincidences that are anything but. You ignore feelings that prick the chest, thinking they're just anxiety, just imagination, just misinterpretation. But those feelings are the breadcrumbs life leaves for those who can see them. The ones who ignore them often miss the connections that arrive quietly, deliberately. Testing whether you were paying attention when everything else distracted you. You replay your interactions, your routines, your patterns, and realize that the signs were always there. Subtle glances, lingering thoughts, repeated coincidences, the way certain names or images appear just often enough to feel uncanny. These aren't mistakes. These are life trying to nudge you awake before opportunity passes, before connection slips through your fingers, because you were too busy ignoring the tiny signals, the whispers, the slight disruptions that scream softly if you only listen. You tell yourself you'll notice next time, that you'll act when it's clearer, that you'll pay attention when you're ready. That's what everyone tells themselves. And that's why so few catch what's meant for them. Life doesn't pause until you're ready. Timing doesn't wait. The signs that matter will arrive and depart, and your readiness is irrelevant to their schedule. You feel moments of déjà vu, coincidences that feel pointed, thoughts of someone that appear uninvited, but insistently. You rationalize them, call them randomness, ignore them. That's the trap. The more you rationalize, the more subtle the signs become, until they require a decision, a recognition, a response that you can't ignore without consequences. You've been trained to dismiss intuition, to mistrust subtlety, to wait for clarity, to demand proof. But the signs that matter don't provide proof. They provide awareness. They give you a glimpse of alignment, of convergence, of possibility. And noticing them requires honesty, attention, courage. Courage to admit that perhaps you've missed what was always in front of you. Courage to act without certainty. Courage to accept that life doesn't follow your rules. You begin seeing patterns you ignored, timing that's too precise to be coincidence, thoughts that recur at moments that matter, interactions that feel significant even if they appear mundane. You question your perception. Is this real? Am I imagining it? That doubt is exactly what the signs are designed to pierce. They test your attention, your presence, your willingness to see what's true even when it's inconvenient. Ignoring the signs trains you to miss the important moments. Recognizing them trains you to respond with clarity, to act with precision, to notice when timing aligns in ways that demand your awareness. You realize that signs don't arrive for decoration. They arrive with purpose. They arrive to redirect, to warn, to illuminate, to open doors that might otherwise remain closed. Missing them isn't just a failure of perception, it's a choice to remain in comfort, to cling to routines, to dismiss subtlety in favor of noise. And the more you cling, the louder the consequences grow until you can no longer ignore them. But recognition isn't passive. It requires engagement. It requires stripping away distraction, filtering the irrelevant, focusing on what persists, what returns, what tugs insistently at attention without explanation. You notice when a name appears in your thoughts at the wrong time, when a pattern repeats just often enough to feel orchestrated, when intuition pricks despite your efforts to rationalize it away. These are the signs you've been missing. They demand presence, not interpretation. They require response, not delay. They arrive to test whether you're awake, whether you're paying attention, whether you can act when subtlety becomes insistence. And yet, even when you notice, you hesitate. You weigh, you question, you doubt. because missing signs has taught you to mistrust your own perception. That hesitation is the final test. Will you recognize truth when it finally demands acknowledgement? Or will you rationalize, wait, and let opportunity slip past quietly, leaving only the echo of what might have been, the breadcrumbs ignored, the signs you didn't see until it was too late, when life's quiet whispers became consequences too loud to ignore? Readiness of the heart isn't about timing, planning, or external circumstances. It isn't about having everything aligned, every fear conquered, every expectation met. Heart readiness is subtle, invisible, and often uncomfortable. You feel it in the chest, in the tightness of the breath, and the restless thoughts that refuse to settle. It's the awareness that something is arriving, someone is arriving, and you can no longer hide behind distractions, routines, or convenient detachment. You convince yourself you'll be ready when the conditions are perfect, when the signals are unmistakable, and your mind has sorted every possible outcome into neat categories. That's the illusion. Hearts don't wait for permission. Hearts respond to presence, to awareness, to the subtle alignment of circumstances that no planner can predict. You feel it in small ways at first, a thought that lingers too long, a name that surfaces unexpectedly, a memory that carries weight beyond reason. You dismiss these feelings because preparation feels safer than exposure. Control feels safer than surrender. Habit feels safer than truth. But the heart doesn't negotiate. It moves whether you acknowledge it or not. And the more you delay recognition, the more the opportunity slips into a rhythm you can't intercept. You begin noticing patterns you would have ignored under normal circumstances, repeated coincidences, timing that feels uncanny, a sense of presence in absence. You rationalize them as imagination, as randomness, as illusion. That's what people do when they aren't ready. They dilute awareness with convenience. They trade intuition for rationalization, and the heart waits, quietly, patiently, testing whether you can bear to see it, to feel it, to acknowledge it. You replay interactions, analyze signals, question perception. You ask yourself whether you're misreading significance, whether you're projecting meaning, whether you're imagining the alignment that appears too deliberate to be chance. That hesitation is the hallmark of unreadiness. Courage is required to notice without overanalyzing, to feel without controlling, to respond without expectation. Readiness isn't about certainty, it's about attention. It's about being awake enough to recognize when someone or something matters before it passes through your life, before the timing shifts, before the signals fade. You feel the pull in the chest, the tension in the thoughts, the subtle alertness that cannot be ignored. It's uncomfortable because it exposes vulnerability. Vulnerability demands presence, and presence demands honesty with yourself. You cannot prepare for readiness in the conventional sense. You cannot organize your mind into a state of receptivity and guarantee understanding. The heart refuses guarantees. It refuses schedules. It operates in alignment with forces beyond calculation, beyond planning, beyond control. You sense the alignment building, timing, opportunity, subtle cues converging in a pattern you didn't design. Your mind wants clarity, wants explanation, wants certainty. The heart doesn't offer these things. It offers only signals, intuition, awareness, insistence. You feel tension because action is required. But action is frightening. You know that acknowledging readiness changes everything. It removes the safety net of indifference. It demands decision, engagement, confrontation with discomfort. You begin to notice persistence in the patterns, thoughts that return, coincidences that recur, feelings that intensify. Each repetition is a test. Are you awake enough to respond, attentive enough to notice, courageous enough to act? And yet, hesitation persists. You rationalize, delay, doubt, because readiness asks for surrender, and surrender is terrifying. You feel the pressure in subtle ways, moments of attention caught too long, moments of silence weighted with meaning, moments when life seems to conspire toward awareness. These are not accidents. These are alignment. You try to prepare, to calculate, to predict, to organize your feelings and timing into perfect readiness. That effort is wasted. Readiness is never perfect. It cannot be manufactured. It must be experienced, felt, acknowledged. The heart doesn't operate on schedules, it operates on resonance, on presence, on alignment with forces that you cannot control. You recognize that preparation is illusion and attention is reality. Awareness is the doorway. Courage is the key. Timing is indifferent to hesitation. Signals grow persistent until you can no longer ignore them, until inaction is impossible. And in that tension, in that pull between fear and recognition, between doubt and attention, you discover the subtle truth. Readiness of the heart is not about having all the answers. It's about noticing when something matters enough to change everything, enough to demand presence, enough to insist that you see, feel, and respond before the opportunity moves beyond you, before chance passes silently into consequence, before alignment completes itself without your acknowledgement, leaving only regret for the moments you weren't awake enough to answer the call. Embracing uncertainty is a dangerous game because it asks you to walk without guarantees, to move without certainty, to act without assurance that the path is safe. Most people avoid it because comfort is a powerful sedative, a layer that makes the chaos of life tolerable. But uncertainty doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about schedules, plans, or preparation. It appears suddenly, unannounced, demanding attention, forcing decision, revealing truths that you would have preferred to ignore. You feel it first as a tension in the chest, a flutter of thoughts that refuse to settle, a nagging awareness that control is an illusion. You tell yourself you'll wait until it's clearer, until the fog lifts, until you understand the rules. That's what everyone does. That's why life surprises so many people, because clarity rarely arrives before action is required. Uncertainty thrives in that hesitation. It grows in the space between thought and movement, between awareness and response, between expectation and reality. You notice it in the small things first, timing that feels slightly off, coincidence that seem too pointed, feelings that prick the chest for no apparent reason. You rationalize them as mistakes, imagination, overreaction. That's the mind defending comfort, pretending that ignorance is safety, pretending that delay is preparation. But uncertainty doesn't pause. It waits quietly, patiently, and then accelerates when you least expect it, arriving at the moment you've assumed you were ready. At the moment you've relaxed your vigilance, you begin replaying scenarios in your head, trying to map outcomes, trying to predict movements, trying to control chaos that isn't yours to control. That effort is useless. You realize that embracing uncertainty is not about predicting outcomes. It's about noticing signals, about feeling without explanation, about responding in alignment with reality rather than expectation. The tension grows because action now matters. Each decision, each recognition, each acknowledgement carries weight, and the unknown refuses to offer comfort. You feel fear, not the dramatic kind, the scream and run kind, but the subtle, insistent kind that prickles your awareness, that demands presence, that forces honesty. It's uncomfortable because it asks you to relinquish the belief that you've mastered the environment, that you can predict what comes next, that safety is inherent in routine. You notice patterns that defy explanation, thoughts that recur, signals that persist, moments that seem orchestrated by chance yet feel deliberate, as if the universe itself is nudging you to pay attention. You dismiss them initially, convincing yourself you'll act when certainty arrives. That dismissal is exactly what uncertainty tests. It's a trap. By the time clarity seems to appear, the moment has already shifted, and the window closes quietly, almost imperceptibly. You recognize that embracing uncertainty is not about eliminating fear. It's about acting despite it. It's about acknowledging discomfort as a sign of awareness rather than a signal to retreat. You feel tension in your body, a sharpened perception of timing, a heightened sensitivity to interactions that would have gone unnoticed before. You notice subtle cues, glances, tones, repeated coincidences, thoughts that insistently return, reminders that something significant is present even if invisible. Your rational mind protests, demanding explanation, demanding proof, demanding patterns that make sense. The heart, intuition, and awareness demand nothing of the sort. They insist on presence, on attention, on acknowledgement without condition. The longer you hesitate, the more fleeting the alignment becomes. The longer you resist, the louder life becomes in forcing you to notice, in compelling you to act, in demonstrating that uncertainty cannot be negotiated with delay. You start to understand that embracing uncertainty is not about preparation, it is about surrender. Surrender does not mean passivity. It means observing, feeling, and responding in real time. It means noticing when opportunity or connection presents itself without waiting for guarantees. It means acknowledging that timing doesn't wait, that the universe does not pause for your comfort, and that the moment that matters will arrive regardless of your readiness. You recognize that hesitation is the enemy, that fear is the teacher, that attention is the ally. Every repeated thought, every persistent coincidence, every unshakable feeling is a call to action. Ignoring it trains you to miss, to remain in comfort, to allow what could matter most to slip past unnoticed. You feel the subtle pressure building, the awareness of potential shifting, the necessity of response. And in that pressure, in the tension between fear and attention, you discover that embracing uncertainty is not surrender to chaos. It is mastery of presence. It is the courage to notice, to act, to feel, and to respond before the fleeting alignment disappears, leaving only the quiet realization that the world doesn't wait, timing doesn't pause, opportunity doesn't knock twice, and connection does linger for those who hesitate, for those who cling to the illusion of comfort, for those who avoid the unknown, instead of leaning into the unpredictable flow that defines life, love, and everything that matters most. People like to pretend they've got everything under control, that they can handle whatever life throws at them with a smile, a little patience, maybe a deep breath or two. But that's a lie, isn't it? Because when things really get hard, when the walls start closing in, when the pressure turns to weight, when everything feels like it's slipping through their fingers, what do? They panic. They break. They look around desperate for someone to save them. People walk around thinking life owes them something, a smooth road, a little respect, maybe a pat on the back for trying their best. But life doesn't care. Life hands out problems like a dealer shuffling cards, and nobody gets to fold. You take what you're given, and you play. But here's the trick. Most people, they see difficulty as a bad hand, something unfair, something to complain about. They act like problems are roadblocks, like they were meant to be somewhere easy and life just rudely got in the way. Like they were promised a shortcut and now they're offended that it's uphill. Funny, isn't it? How people spend their whole lives running from the very thing that's supposed to make them better. Oh, they want growth, sure. They want success. They want to be stronger, smarter, untouchable. But they don't want the process. They don't want to go through the part where it hurts. They want power without pain, wisdom without wounds, victory without war. And when they realize it doesn't work like that there's no bypass, no loophole, no magic way out, that's when they break. That's when they quit. That's when they start whispering to themselves that maybe, just maybe, they were never meant for more. But difficult isn't a wall, it's a doorway. It's a test. It's life looking you right in the eyes and asking, how bad do you want it? And most people, they don't. They want easy. They want comfortable. They want everything handed to them in a neat little package with a guarantee and a return policy. But the ones who make it, the ones who become something, they're the ones who understand the truth. That difficulty is the only way through, that every problem, every struggle, every moment that feels like too much is just another invitation to level up. See, people think they want success, they think they want strength, but those things, they have requirements. You don't just wake up one day powerful. You don't just wake up unshakable, untouchable, impossible to break. No, no, no. You earn it. You bleed for it. You suffer for it. Because every time life throws something at you and you handle it, you get sharper. Every time you fall and get back up, you get stronger. Every time you keep going, when every part of you is screaming to stop, you become something else, something different, something rare. But most people never make it that far, because the second things get tough, the second life stops being polite, they start looking for the exit. They start blaming, complaining, crying about how unfair it all is, because deep down they still think they deserve easy. They still think the world should cooperate with them. They don't understand that the struggle isn't a mistake. It's the path. That every difficulty isn't blocking them from their goal. It is the goal. But you want to know the real difference between the ones who make it and the ones who don't? The ones who win and the ones who disappear? It's simple. The ones who win, the ones who become something, they stop waiting for easy. They stop running from difficulty. They stop seeing struggle as something to get through and start seeing it as something to use. They don't wake up hoping the day will be smooth. They wake up prepared for the storm. They don't panic when things go wrong. They expect it. They don't waste time wishing things were easier. They get stronger. And that changes everything. Because once you stop seeing difficulty as an enemy, once you stop fighting the process and start embracing it, suddenly you become someone that nothing can break. Someone that life stops messing with. Because the truth is, life doesn't get easier, you just get better at handling it. People act like fighting makes things harder. Like if they just relax, if they just go with the flow, everything will magically get better. But that's not how it works. See, life has this funny little rule. The more you resist, the heavier the burden becomes. And most people, they don't get that. They fight against everything, every problem, every setback, every challenge. They act like it shouldn't be there, like life is somehow wrong for making them struggle. So they push, they resist, they fight against what is, instead of learning how to move through it. And in the end, it just makes everything worse. Ever seen someone stuck in quicksand? They panic, they flail, they fight, and what happens? They sink faster, because the more you resist, the deeper you go. The more you struggle against the struggle, the stronger it holds you. And the ones who survive, they don't fight it. They understand it. They move with it. Because the only way out isn't to struggle harder, it's to stop resisting. But people don't like that idea. They want to feel in control. They want to believe that if they just push hard enough, if they just refuse to accept the hardship, it'll go away. But that's not control, that's fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of letting go, fear of accepting that life is never going to cooperate with them. And so they keep resisting, keep fighting against reality, thinking they're being strong, when all they're really doing is making their own suffering worse. See, people think pain comes from the problem. They think the thing that hurts them is the situation, the challenge, the setback. But pain doesn't come from what happens. It comes from their resistance to it, Two people can go through the exact same struggle, and one of them comes out stronger while the other falls apart. Same problem, same difficulty, completely different outcome. Why? Because one of them embraced it and the other fought it. Look around. Do you ever notice how the most powerful people, the ones who really seem untouchable, they don't panic. They don't waste time complaining about how unfair it all is. They just move. They adjust. They use what's happening instead of wasting their energy trying to deny it. And that's why nothing breaks them. Not because they're lucky, not because life is easier for them, but because they understand the game. They don't fight reality. They master it. But most people, they do the opposite. They act like life owes them something. They act like it's unfair that things don't go their way. And the more they resist, the heavier it all becomes. Because life doesn't care how much you wish things were different. Life doesn't care how hard you fight against the truth. All life does is respond. And if you keep struggling, keep resisting, keep fighting against the inevitable, all you're doing is tightening your own chain. And that's the real trick, isn't it? The ones who make it, the ones who rise, they don't get there by force, they get there by flow. They don't waste time wishing the storm wasn't happening, they become the storm. They don't waste energy fighting against the fire, they walk through it, knowing it's the only way to forge steel. And once you figure that out, once you stop resisting what life is throwing at you, suddenly things stop feeling so impossible. Not because life gets easier, but because you stop making it harder. People love to believe that if something is hard, it means it's wrong. Like the moment things get difficult, that's life's way of saying, stop, turn around, go back. But that's not how it works. No. See, the hard way? That's usually the only way. But people don't like that idea. They want shortcuts. They want hacks. They want to glide through life like it's all prearranged for them, like every door should just open with a smile. And the second things don't go that way, they panic. They complain. They start looking for a way out instead of a way through. You ever seen how people act when they hit a wall? They freeze. They hesitate. They doubt. They start asking the wrong questions. Why is this happening to me? Why is life so unfair? Why can't things just be easy? But the wall doesn't care about their questions. The wall doesn't move just because they whine about it. And the people who get stuck, they stand there, banging their heads against the bricks, acting like if they just wished hard enough the wall would disappear. But the ones who make it, they don't stand around wishing. They climb. That's the funny part, isn't it? Everybody wants success. Everybody wants to win. But the moment they realize that winning comes with struggle, with failure, with pain, suddenly they're not so sure. They tell themselves, maybe it's not meant to be. Maybe I should quit. Maybe the universe is trying to tell me something. No. The only thing the universe is telling you is how bad do you want it. And that's the part people don't like to hear because they don't want it bad enough. They don't want to go through the fire. They just want to arrive. But it doesn't work like that. No one just arrives. The ones at the top, they bled for it. They suffered. They fell so many times they lost count, and every single time they got back up. Not because they felt like it, not because they were motivated, but because they had to, because there was no other option, because the idea of staying down was worse than the pain of getting up. It's what people don't understand. They think motivation is the key. They think they need to feel ready. No, you don't wait for motivation. You move. without it. See, life has this little trick. The second you decide to go after something, the second you decide to chase something bigger, life tests you. It throws everything it has in your way, obstacles, failures, setbacks, betrayals. And most people, they take that as a sign to quit. They think it means they should turn around. But the truth, that's just the price of admission. That's life checking if you're serious. And the ones who make it, they don't turn back. They pay the price. Look around. You ever notice how the ones who truly make it, the ones who get everything they ever wanted, they all tell the same story? I lost everything. I struggled for years. I almost gave up. It's never, it was easy. It's never, everything went according to plan, because it never does. It never will. The moment you set out to do something real, something great, life will test you. And the only way through is to keep moving, to stop looking for a way around the pain and just walk straight through it. And that's what separates the ones who win from the ones who watch others win. It's not talent, it's not luck, it's not some secret formula. It's the ability to keep going when everything is telling you to stop. It's the ability to take the hits, to swallow the pain, to look at every failure, every setback, every broken moment, and say again. Because the truth is, the moment you stop looking for easy, the moment you stop expecting it to be smooth, suddenly nothing can stop you. People think they can handle pressure until pressure starts pressing back. They say they're strong. They say they don't break easy, but the second life turns up the heat, they're looking for a way out. Funny, isn't it? How people love to talk about resilience but hate to prove it. See, everybody wants to believe they're built for the storm until the storm actually hits. Then suddenly they're not so sure anymore. It's a game, you see. Life sets the pieces, moves them around, and then waits, watches, tests you. You ever notice how the second you decide to change, the second you try to climb a little higher, life throws everything it can in your way? You get problems from places you never expected. You get stabbed in the back by people you trusted. You get hit over and over, and you start wondering if maybe this whole thing was a mistake. Maybe it's not meant to be. Maybe you should just go back to being like everyone else. That's the real trick, isn't it? Life doesn't have to stop you. It just has to make you stop yourself. And it does it so well. Not by force, no, by doubt, by exhaustion, by whispering little lies in your ear. It's too hard. It's not worth it. You're not strong enough. And most people, they listen. They start bargaining with their own potential. Maybe I don't need to go that far. Maybe I should just be satisfied with where I am. And that's how it wins. Not by knocking you out, but by getting you to lay down all on your own. You ever seen what happens when people start feeling comfortable with their excuses? They get defensive. They start explaining why they had to quit, why it was the right decision. They start looking for people who will nod and agree with them, who will say, yeah, you tried your best. But deep down, they know. They know they let something beat them, and that feeling, that's a poison that doesn't go away. Because once you let one excuse in, it gets easier. The next time something gets hard, you quit a little faster. And the time after that, even faster. Until one day, you don't even try at all. That's why most people never change. It's not because they can't. It's because they've trained themselves to quit. They've taught themselves that the moment things get too uncomfortable, too painful, they should stop. They deserve to stop. But here's the thing, pain is not the enemy. Struggle is not the enemy. The real enemy, avoidance. That's the thing that keeps you weak. That's the thing that keeps you trapped. The longer you run from difficulty, the softer you become, the more fragile, the more easily broken. Look around, the people who are truly strong, the ones who seem untouchable, unshakable, they didn't start that way. They were built in the fire. They were forged in it. They learned to sit with the struggle, to take the pain, to wear it like armor. Because here's the secret. The more you lean into difficulty, the less it controls you. The more you embrace it, the more power you have over it. See, people think they have to wait until they feel ready to fight back. They think they need the perfect moment to start moving, to start changing, but that moment never comes. There's never a perfect time to be strong. Strength isn't something you wait for, it's something you choose. And every time you make that choice, every time you take the hit and keep standing, you win. Not in a flashy way, not in a way the world will always see, but in the only way that actually matters. People want to believe they're in control, that they've got the reins, that their hands are steady, that every move they make is part of some grand, brilliant plan. But the truth is most people are just reacting, bouncing from one problem to the next, one disappointment to another, like a puppet on strings they can't even see. They tell themselves they're making choices, but really they're just dodging. Dodging pain, dodging pressure, dodging anything that makes them feel too small. You ever watch someone who's lost? Not the kind of lost where they don't know where they are. The kind where they don't know who they are. It's funny, really. They walk around with this look in their eye like they're waiting for something to happen. Like any second now, life is going to come knocking with a neat little answer wrapped up with a bow telling them exactly what to do next. But life doesn't work like that. Life doesn't hand out roadmaps. It doesn't care if you're confused. And that's where the problem starts. Because when people don't know what to do, they start looking for anyone who does. They cling to voices that sound confident, even if those voices are leading them nowhere. They follow footsteps that have no destination. They put their trust in hands that will never pull them up. And then one day they wake up and realize, this isn't where I wanted to be. But by then the chains are already tight. The weight's already there. And moving feels impossible. That's how most people live, stuck in places they don't belong, following people they don't trust, pretending they're okay with it, and the worst part, they know better. Somewhere deep inside, they know. But knowing and acting, those are two very different things. See, most people don't lack knowledge, they lack nerve. They lack the guts to do what needs to be done, because doing that would mean breaking free. And breaking free, that's painful. People don't like pain. They avoid it, they numb it, they pretend it's not there. But the ones who win, they walk through it. They let it sharpen them, because pain is a sculptor. It carves away the weak parts, the soft parts, the parts that keep you stuck. And if you let it, if you really let it, it will show you who you really are. But most people never get that far. Because right when the change starts to hurt, right when it starts to demand something from them, they quit. They go running back to the comfort of their cages. They convince themselves that being stuck isn't so bad, that maybe they weren't meant for something more. And that's the moment they lose. Not to the world, not to their enemies, but to themselves. The ones who make it, they're different. They don't wait for the right moment, the right feeling. They move, even when they're scared, even when it hurts, even when every part of them is screaming to turn back. And that's what sets them apart. That's what makes them dangerous. Because once you stop running from pain, once you start using it, nothing can stop you. Nothing. People walk around thinking they've got all the time in the world, like there's some giant hourglass somewhere filled with endless sand, always refilling itself every time they waste a day. They tell themselves, tomorrow I'll get serious. Next week I'll start changing. Next year I'll be different. But tomorrow comes, and next week shows up, and next year laughs in their face. Because they're still standing in the same place, spinning the same stories, making the same excuses. It's funny, isn't it, how people beg for a way out, but when the door cracks open, they just stand there staring, like a dog who's been in a cage too long. You ever seen that? You take the lock off, swing the door wide, and they just sit, because the cage became home. Because the idea of running free, that's terrifying. People are the same. They pray for change, cry for it, scream for it, until it shows up. And suddenly, they're not so sure. Because change is cruel. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It rips things apart. It drags you through the fire. It takes a wrecking ball to everything comfortable, everything safe, and it leaves you standing in the rubble, staring at the pieces of the life you thought you needed. And that's the moment most people crawl back. They look at the mess, at the chaos, and instead of building something new, they run back to the ruins, trying to glue them back together. That's the mistake. That's the trap. Trying to fix something that was never meant to be fixed. Holding on to things that should have been left behind, because the truth is, most of what people cling to, it's already dead. The friendships they swear they can't lose, the habits they refuse to let go of, the image of themselves that makes them feel safe. All of it rotting, crumbling, just waiting to be buried. But people, they don't like funerals. They don't like saying goodbye. So they dress the corpse up, put some makeup on it, prop it up in the corner, and pretend it's still alive. That's why they stay stuck. That's why they keep waking up with that empty feeling, that quiet little voice whispering, this isn't it. This isn't who you're supposed to be. Because deep down, they know. They know. But knowing isn't enough. It never has been. You can know the road is burning, but if you keep walking down it, don't be surprised when your feet catch fire. You can know a storm is coming, but if you refuse to leave, don't complain when the roof caves in. Life doesn't wait. It doesn't slow down because you're scared. It doesn't pause while you decide whether you're strong enough. It keeps moving, keeps demanding, and if you don't move with it, you get left behind. Not with a bang, not with some dramatic explosion, just slowly, quietly, a little more numb every day, a little more bitter, a little more comfortable in the wrong place until one day you don't even realize you're trapped. But there's always a moment where the fog clears, where for just a second you see the truth of where you are, see the weight you're carrying, see the lies you've been telling yourself. And that moment, that's your chance. The only question is, what are you going to do with it?